Welcome back, everybody, to Two Girls Without Cancer. I'm here with
Ashley.
and I'm Becky, and we have another amazing guest today to talk about gut health. That is like number one on Ashley's and my list of things to repair.
It's your second brain.
Literally. It works more than my actual brain. I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm so food driven and like gut pain all the time. So like, yeah, gut health is super, super important. Our guest is named Marilyn Dellit. She's a functional medicine practitioner. She helps women overcome their gut and hormone imbalances from a root cause approach, which we love. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to Miss Marilyn. Hello.
Hi, ladies.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be here with you
We are
both.
so excited to have you. As soon as I saw your message, I was like, oh my God, I need this girl on the show ASAP. Like we've had a lot of really great guests and we've loved every interview, but I was like very excited about gut health.
Important.
Especially, well, I mean, really both of us, but like, especially with Ashley and the SIBO, it's important that we talk.
It's frustrating and I hate it. Becky is very good at being positive, but I've been slipping lately. And well, once you get into that toxic state in your body, your mind doesn't work. And it's hard to get out of the depression because it happens all the time.
It's
like
viral.
a circle.
Yeah. And it's just like you said, right? Oftentimes we do to the gut as our second brain. And so we know that there's that hole and we can dive into this, but the whole gut brain axis where really if we have imbalance or inflammation within the gut, we can start with that neuroinflammation, which can lead to everything from depression, anxiety, brain fog, fatigue. And the thing that we were just chatting about really quickly is that gut imbalance and GI issues, symptoms, whatever you want to call it, are so common, but it's not really spoken about, right? So it's I think it's amazing to be able to bring gut health kind of to the forefront of people's minds so that they really understand that oftentimes disease begins in the gut.
Yeah, I can attest to this with my daughter. She's 12, horrible skin right now, like tons of zits, the poor thing. Brain fog, like restless, can't really sleep well, does not do very well in school, emotionally very unregulated. And I mean, most people think, okay, well, she's a 12-year-old girl, obviously.
Like depression.
She's in grade 7, like she's going through puberty, like of course. Hormones. But I truly believe that there's more gut stuff going on. And I went and had a food sensitivities test done on her. And she came back with quite a few pretty high food sensitivities. And the naturopath was like, well, no wonder she's experiencing these things. She's literally inflamed everywhere. Her ovaries are inflamed. Her brain is inflamed. Her body is inflamed. So obviously she's having all of these issues. He said, if you cut out those main trigger points, you're going to see a big difference. And I did. But it's very hard to keep up with that because she's 12. Like she wants to go have pizza and ice cream with her friends. And I'm like, no, can't have it. You can have this salad and chicken.
It's so hard. And like, there's so many different thoughts, like just going through my mind in that like 2 sentences. Right. And like one of them is the fact that like all of our systems work synergistically within the body. Right. So like, no wonder, just like you're saying, like her hormones are skewed and her skin is flared. Like our skin is like a reflection of what's going on in the gut, right? Like her mood is off. So in conventional medicine, oftentimes we look at each of those systems separately, right? Like your gastro and you go to the cardiologist for, heart issues and your endocrinologist for thyroid and, everything else. Whereas in functional medicine, everything is looked at as one functioning, organism and everything working really synergistically. So when we have like one imbalance in one system, at some point, if we don't sort of stop that imbalance or deficiency, whatever it may be in its tracks, eventually that is going to evolve into other downstream symptoms in other parts and, of the body. And the other thing is, just really quickly to speak to it, I just get so excited about all of this, but with food sensitivities, like specifically with your daughter, right? It's all good and well to, temporarily remove these food triggers. But again, with functional medicine, what we do is we go even more upstream of that, because if we just take away those foods, right? It's like you said, she's 12 years old. That's really hard to be in that restrictive mindset. So the way that, I like to work with my clients is looking at things from a place of abundance, right? So rather than taking away more things, especially at that age, it's like, well, what can we actually add in to be able to rebuild the microbiome, to be able to support those hormones? And when it comes to removing foods, because I have so many clients that come with food sensitivities, we're actually doing our body, if it's long-term, a disservice, right? Because a lot of those foods that we take away, especially things like SIBO and low FODMAP, where we're taking away specific fruits and veggies, our microbiome needs that to thrive. So we need to go way upstream of the food sensitivities themselves and figure out why she's developed these to begin with. And oftentimes that can circle back to a leaky gut, right?
Interesting.
I tell her, I'm trying to work with her. Like I can do the live blood analysis on her. I'm like, let me just see what's going on with your gut, please. And she doesn't like get poked with a needle, right? So she's like, no, I don't want that. I'm like, babe, like we need to see something in your gut is really off here. Like there's probably major inflammation. So, I mean, like, I know that there's inflammation there. At this point, I probably just do need to change everything regardless of what her feelings are, but
we have to. If she wants to, I always tell like my son's 5, I'm like, you have to do these things so that you can live long and have a good life. And he's like, okay, mom. But I'm starting young. Yours is already like has a mind of her own.
Oh my gosh, I have a 7 and 10-year-old, and like right, like kind of in between with the two of yours, and they do have a mind of their own. But I think it's really important to teach them young and in child-friendly ways, like why we're doing what we're doing. I have done stool samples on everyone in my family, including my kiddos, and when the little red elevated bugs show up, like I try and explain to them this is why, and sometimes they'll take it and run with it. My daughter's a little bit more open to that. My son is kind of like, meh, okay. But I think it's just a slow integration, right? And like educating that where we can. And sometimes, especially with children, it's a matter of, okay, well, we can still have like certain sweets or treats or foods, but we just sort of have to make accommodations and find like healthier alternatives. So that's like a job as a mama all on its own.
Literally.
Right? That's what I do with my little one.
Well, that's like what I'm finding tough is like, if we're, even just if we're talking foods, just splitting it up into, well, you can have this one, but you don't have that. So you can have this. And it's like, well, why can she have it and I can't, kind of thing. So like that makes it very, very difficult. Like really what I should do is make all of us just eat the same very healthy foods. But again, like not everyone is the same. And so not everyone is going to benefit in the same way. But, like for her, like just little simple things. Okay, like let's get this digestive enzyme in you. At least we can start breaking down the foods. Oh, you're feeling a little sluggish today. Well, like let's make sure we don't forget your, your B's and your D's and your C's today. Like just little things. I have a lot of like chewable and spray type stuff too. And they'll just swallow pills. Both my girls swallow pills without water. Isn't that bizarre?
I can't.
They're 12 14. I know.
I'm almost 40 and I still hate swallowing pills.
Yeah, it can be hard to get down. I feel like with my daughter's the same way. Like I think it's like a prove it to you kind of a thing. My daughter is like more than happy to swallow pills without water. My son
I can do it. Watch me.
They're so totally different. Yeah, but it's also like looking at gut health as like food as medicine, right? So I always say targeted supplementation, even if it comes to things like probiotics, vitamins, minerals, whatever it is that we might, have on board, that can be really helpful if we know what we're targeting, right? Or if we know where the imbalance or the deficiency lies. And there are certain things like magnesium and omegas that the majority of America, Canada, right, is deficient in, right? So sometimes we need to use targeted supplementation, but also food and being able to use that as a primary medicine to refeed and kind of reseed the gut, also like really important. But I will say, we generally try and as a family, as a whole, if we're going to implement a specific type of diet, like say gluten-free, I try to get everyone on board. And there's so many options.
Yes.
But I get it. It's tough.
We struggle like that in my house because everyone wants something different. My husband eats different than I eat, than my kids eat. And it's like, it's exhausting. So I'm like, everyone fend for themselves. Right? But then that's just it. Like what kid, if I'm like, hey, go fend for yourselves, like, especially when I was sick, go eat whatever. I don't care. Just go in the fridge. What kid is going to be like, you know what? I'm going to make this really healthy salad. I'm going to cook a salmon. They're not going to do that. They're grabbing the Mr. Noodles because we have it.
And it's easy and fast.
They're making a grilled cheese sandwich because it's easy. So, I mean, Yeah, that is definitely tough. As a parent, man, it's very tough to let or help your family eat well.
It is. And it's a transition, right? Yeah. Like it's not an overnight, fix or an overnight transition. But I think it's like that slow introduction, trying to bring the kids in to like help chop the veggies, right? Or like help stir, the soup or whatever age appropriate, activity to involve them in the kitchen, and I'm saying this with like in an ideal right way, like I can have my kids chop Brussels sprouts and they're not going to eat them. But, just introducing them to the concept and the idea of using this food to really fuel our body and introducing them to the thought of which food category is going to do what for our body, right? Like, I think my son drops his blood sugar pretty quickly. And so for me, it's really important to educate him, like why we need to eat our proteins and our fats at lunch instead of leaving them in the lunchbox, right?
Yeah, my son, he has no interest in the kitchen, but when I'm in there, we talk about everything and he'll go get me the spinach for our shake, the banana, he'll grab me the things that I need, but that's as far as he goes. But at least he's still in there with me and understanding. He is like, he knows we have our detox bath. He knows he can only eat mummy salt because it's Celtic sea salt and has minerals. Like he's on the right track. I even was saying that to my mom the other day, like this little boy is going to be pretty knowledgeable when he grows up because he's what mommy does, right? And it's
you're laying the foundation.
Yeah.
They do remember it. Even, my kids are super resistant to all the things because like TikTok didn't say it, right? Like my kid all of a sudden wants these foods. Yeah.
Right.
Like my kids want these foods. And I'm like, what? Like different restaurants like that we don't even have in Canada. And they'll be like, oh, we really want to go there. I'm like, why? Well, because it was on TikTok. Like, this is a disgusting fast food. It's fast food chicken. Like, you can literally get the same everywhere. It's not any different. But because social media and, children are very influenced by that, they do absorb it. So, like as your son sees you making healthy choices, making, supplement choices and stuff, it will absorb into him.
And it does, like in the morning, he goes, because I lost the lymph nodes on my right side in my stomach. And he's like, Mommy, did you go on the trampoline? Because we have a rebounder, a little one, because I need it. He's like, did you do your jumps yet? I was like, no, did you? And he'll remind me and stuff like that because we do it morning and night.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like we've got a rebounder at home as well, and like the kids use it right for their like fun and launching themselves from like point A to point B. I use it for rebounding, but again, just like kind of laying and like setting the pillars now, because I'm sure my kids at some point are probably, maybe not, but going to fall off track and spiral and go for all of the junk on planet Earth when they're of age. But my hope is it's like establishing it now so that hopefully at some point, if that were to happen, they'll circle back because they have that foundational, knowledge and upbringing. We're doing the best we can, right?
Totally. You can take the kid out of the crunchy home, but you can never take the crunchy out of the kid. They'll know. I have high hopes for them. They're going to hear it one day. That's an endocrine disruptor.
Right?
Oh my God. What are phthalates? No, like they're going to hear it one day in their heads while they're doing their own shopping. And I look forward to that day. Oh my gosh.
I love it. Yeah, I know it's definitely like for adults, it's difficult. So like, it's hard to expect children, but again, I think being the role model, right? And they're always watching, as we know. So just making sure that we're kind of setting the example and expectations that we want our children to sort of, walk in down the road. And, what's also important, I think, to just remember and keep in, the back of the mind is we can be doing everything in the world, right, within our home, at least, like control the controllables to optimize our health and overall wellness, including the gut microbiome. But we also know that children inherit, right, like their mother's microbiome to a certain extent. So
great. My son's like low iron right now.
But the beauty in that is just having this knowledge, knowing, okay, well, we can do, a stool test and we can see what's going on in the gut. Maybe some of it is inherited, but these more like epigenetic and lifestyle nutritional influences are going to be what really moves the needle. So, it's just, I love the gut. It's just so fascinating. And it have so fascinating.
I need to do your test because I'm frustrated because it's like that roller coaster for me. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I try to do everything that I can to keep it on track. But I just had a relapse. It wasn't that long this time. I think it was almost 2 weeks, but it's hard. It's hard to understand. So I think this test would be very beneficial, not just for me because I have SIBO, but for everybody.
The landscape, right, of our gut is always changing day to day, right? And it will change depending on, maybe your flare came because of, you know, what was going on around you, like something in the environment. If maybe there was like an added stressor.
I found out it was a virus.
Right. Or a virus, right? Higher toxic load or viral increase that stress. Yeah. So there's a lot that will influence that gut microbiome, you know, and when I, you know, work with clients, what we do is not just go, okay, well, what are you presenting with today? Like, what are your symptoms now? What we do is we go all the way back. We go back to, well, what kind of a birth were you? Were you a vaginal? Were you a C-section? Because that matters. Were you bottle fed or breastfed? What kind of stressors did you, you know, potentially come into during childhood that could have impacted your microbiome that we haven't been able to really balance just yet, right? Were there mentally emotional traumas? Was there toxic exposure, heavy metals, mold in the environment? So in functional medicine, kind of, it's a very comprehensive approach.
You know what's crazy?
Light bulb
that just hit me. I ended up getting, when I was young, I was 12 years old, and I ended up landing in the hospital. I got food poisoning that went into my bloodstream, and I was in the hospital for weeks, and I was almost dead. Like my mom said, for a week. I remember opening my eyes and I seeing my family sitting around me, and then I would shut them. And so I wonder if that could have just stemmed from there or something. I don't know.
Over the edge, there's a lot, right? Like, you're so different. Like, you two could have, and I know that you don't, but for example, like, you could have identical symptoms, right? Or I could have, you know, 5 different clients come to me with 5 of the exact same diagnoses. Your 5 different upstream root causes, your past, your health history, right, is completely different from one another. So that's where we say N equals 1. Each person is unique, right? Which means that it's not this blanket approach where we're going to, you know, address your issues the same way that we address your issues. Everyone is coming from a different path and walk of life. And that's why it's really important to not just look at what's happening today, but what happened, like you said, when you landed in the hospital, right? And I think, you know, further to that, being able to really identify what's still going on in the present day that could be continuing to exacerbate your symptoms from, maybe when they did start at 12 years old with food poisoning, going way upstream to figure out what sort of lifestyle factors, toxic load, nutritional deficits you might be experiencing today that hasn't quite been able to shift you out of that dysbiotic environment that you're experiencing right now.
So do you know much about IBS and SIBO? Because I was doing some research, and they say that they're kind of connected, the two of them. Is that true?
So IBS, so in the conventional world, right, they'll kind of label those differently. So the way I kind of look at it is, you know, diagnoses, and this is just in my world and where I come from, you know, and my beliefs, but, you know, a diagnosis essentially is like a label for this collection of symptoms, right? And that's where conventional medicine sort of stops. So if you go to the, you know, doctor and you're going, oh, okay, you know, like I have frequent bowel movements, like I don't know what foods are triggering me, or maybe I have constipation and bloating, they might say, okay, well, you're now labeled with IBS. So this is going to be like the standard course, you know, of care that we're going to take you down. Whereas SIBO, right, is like another label or diagnosis. But what we want to do is go below those symptoms to understand where those imbalances lie. And that's that root cause, right? So SIBO, right, is that small intestinal bowel overgrowth where you can have, right, the bacteria that are migrating upwards into the small intestine, driving a lot of those symptoms they're experiencing. IBS oftentimes can circle back to sort of like, not always, but oftentimes like a nervous system dysregulation, where there's kind of this disconnect between what's happening in the gut and our second brain, that enteric nervous system, and the brain itself. There's what's called, right, this kind of like super highway. Because so if there are imbalances in the gut.
Right. They were saying that because they're like, well, this isn't connected to that anymore. And I'm like, what? But it makes sense.
So can you retrain it to
connect?
That's
what I'm wondering, because like I had my surgeries. So they cut me open. The last 2 were really big. The scars like this on my stomach, but it's been cut open twice. Now, they said I've lost a lot of nerve endings and it's not connected. So my brain telling my stomach and all this stuff, and then the peritoneum taken out tissue. But can it, like work again, retrain itself?
So we always have to take into consideration, right? Like any sort of structural abnormalities that might be at play because of your specific history, right? Like, is there scar tissue? Are there adhesions? Like what could potentially be going on, right? But then we do also have to look at the other side of it. Like, is there some sort of dysfunction within the gut because of an imbalance in the microbial, action that's going on down there? So oftentimes I find like, it's not just one thing, right? Like, could your surgeries have been at play? Potentially, right? Like with your current symptoms, they could be, maybe triggering. But again, like if there is a dysbiosis, especially given your history and knowing we've chatted a little bit back and forth and other underlying dynamics, things that were removed in the past, like knowing that there was very likely inflammation going on within the gut itself, right? That might have been driven, everything else, including the potential for inflammation systemically that could have driven.
All the antibiotics I was on. I had a lot in the last 2 years. Yours.
We both just hate antibiotics, and we both, because of having cancer, like have both had to go on it so many times because of infection. Like I was infected all the time and I would try to avoid it until the very, I couldn't any further. But man, like because of it, I think both of our guts are really suffering.
Absolutely.
It can be, and look, I always say there is 100%, there's a time and a place for acute care medicine. Thank goodness we have it when we need it, right? So there are times, like where we're going to need the antibiotics, when we're going to need, that triage, and we're very lucky and blessed to have access to it. And also there's a time and a place where, we can utilize alternatives to, and upstream changes, right? To be able to impact and influence, and benefit downstream, parts and systems in the body. But there's a lot that we're exposed to in this day and age that we weren't way back when. Like, sure, antibiotics, things like SSRIs, oral contraceptives, PPIs, right? Acid reducers, all of those can negatively impact our gut microbiome and all of the beneficial bacteria that reside down there. And although, yes, antibiotics can be super beneficial when we need them, right? All of those can cause a lot of wear and tear and inflammation within the gut itself.
It's crazy, like the amount that they put these young girls on birth controls. I said to my girls, like, you better not ever even look at a boy because like you're never going on birth control ever. Like, just so you know. They're like, well, what about for skin? What about for that? And like my oldest one, 14, like a couple of zits here, thinks she needs Accutane. So between both of those, I'm like, never. Like, like you're not even like a Florida. Can you imagine if I put you on Accutane? Like, insane. The thing is too, like I take my kids to the doctor because they're both at an age old enough where they can give consent. They kick me out of the room and they say, I'd like to have a conversation privately with your daughters. And so like my kid had horrible stomach pains and they kicked me out, and I came back in and I was like, they asked if you were pregnant, right? Sexually active, if there's violence at home or whatever. And I get it. Like they want the kid to be safe. I appreciate that. They want them to be able to share without the influence of the parents. But like, obviously I know what they're talking to them about.
We've been right. We were young ones. Yeah, definitely. But, even when it comes to things, like hormones and, the potential for, fertility and whatnot, like there are other options. It's just having that awareness, right? Like fertility awareness method, like is a total legitimate way, right? To be able to, either conceive or choose not to. And so I think it's knowing what options you have, knowing the alternatives that are out there, and kind of knowing the tools available to you. But it's not like that common, right? So we kind of have to do the digging or find the people and kind of find that tribe that's going to be able to kind of bring that to the table.
I think a lot of it does come back to just like having your body balanced, eating the proper foods, nourishing your body, because your body wants to be healthy.
Of course it does.
Like your body knows how to make good, good choices for itself. Obviously it's your body, it's perfection. It just needs a little bit of
guidance, and we need to have those tools, like that testing or that other one we were talking about the other day, that provides you to be on the right path, and you know what's going on in your stomach and your whole body.
Yeah. So our last episode, we were talking about hair and tissue analysis. And then now, with you do a GI map. So why don't you tell everybody listening, like, what exactly your job is and like how you're helping people?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. So I specialize in women's gut and hormone health. And so what that means is taking women one-on-one and being able to really identify root cause imbalances specific, like we chatted about, to their unique lifestyle, their unique history. So we can do that through a really comprehensive health intake, right? And then that helps us and allows me to identify, well, what lab testing would be most beneficial and effective for that specific person. So whether it is looking at lab work from a functional lens and what's optimal for each person, whether it is stool testing or hormone testing, and then being able to take those results and then really create a customized plan that's going to help to rebalance whatever those imbalances are. We kind of walk through everything from nutrition, like we know how important it is to really fuel the body on a cellular level. We talk through nervous system, regulation, optimizing detoxification in the body. So it's my goal in working with women is really to be able to educate, inspire, and then empower women so that they can move forward and really have this health, vitality, and longevity in a very sustainable way because they have that understanding. So really, what I believe is where disease stems from is nutrient poor food, toxins, and stress. And so if we can kind of flip the script on that, then there should be no reason that our body can't naturally find that balance.
Have you ever heard people say that like menopause should not be what it is? Like it shouldn't be hot flashes, pain, brain fog, body pain, all the things. Like I've heard that menopause should just be just like an easy transition all of a sudden, but because of lifestyle and imbalances that now women struggle through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that, right, perimenopausal era. So, on average, menopause these days is about 51 years old, right? Like genetics also is at play when it comes to that. But perimenopause typically starts about 10 years prior to menopause. So anywhere from like very late 30s to, your 40 and early 40s is where those perimenopausal symptoms can begin. But what we do know, as with many things, is, an imbalance in the gut can definitely skew those hormones. Stress can skew those hormones. Toxic load, right? Poor liver detox. There's so many different facets that will influence the skewing of these hormones. And what can end up happening, whether women are in this perimenopausal phase or menopause itself, is we can have this imbalance between our sex hormones, right? A few of those primary being estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And just like you said, because of our current lifestyle, because of the standard American diet, because of our stress load, and then our inability to be able to sort of offset, right, all of those environmental factors, we can end up with a skewing of hormones. And that's oftentimes where women, will struggle with heavy, irregular periods, right? Fibroids, endometriosis, mood swings, poor sleep as they're getting into later years, right? Low libido, low motivation, all of the really amazing things that, right, we should not have to experience, right? And I feel like there's such a go, go, go mentality and a hustle mentality, right, in our society these days, that really in this era, this is really where we need to be focusing and honing in on things like self-care and nourishing and nurturing ourselves and doing the things that maybe we were able to kind of get away with in our 20s, right? And our teens and early 30s.
Partying all night, sleeping no time, being hungover, going to work.
Totally.
Can't do that.
It will hit us and it will hit us hard. So it's really a time to tune in and try and regulate rather than, just push through.
What are your thoughts on fasting as well? Because I hear a lot of things on fasting with your cycle.
Yeah, for sure. So again, right, it depends where on our cycle we are. It depends, are we able, like, is our body in a capacity to be in a fasting state? Because a fasting state depending on what's going on with you, can cause added stress. So I don't think that fasting is necessarily for anyone. I think that we need to make sure that we are regulated first. But then sure, fasting can be fantastic for anybody dealing with, metabolic inflexibility, anybody who might be dealing with hormonal imbalances, PCOS, later menopausal years, if there is weight gain and we're trying to make that shift. But there are better times to fast throughout your cycle, than just winging it, I guess you could say.
What about for a person who no longer gets a period, still cycles, but doesn't get a period? How do they fast for, because I keep hearing this. I had an ablation and my tubes removed like 4 years ago. So I still cycle, but I have no idea when. If I base it on maybe like how my skin looks, perhaps, but I want to fast. Like the Dr. Mindy Pels has a book, Fast Like a Girl, amazing book, but I have no idea how to regulate my cycle with that.
Yeah. And I would be curious, like, if you feel differently, like if you were to track month to month, if you, do feel differently at all, like mood, energetically, like libido, focus, motivation, like if that shifts at all for you throughout the month or not so much, because the best time really to be fasting, if we are cycling, right, and we are ovulating, that's a whole nother thing. You can cycle, you can have a period, but you're not actually ovulating, right? There are different times to do that, probably more so in our follicular phase, like the first kind of half of your cycle, rather than that second half, in that luteal phase. It's fasting is a very hot topic, but I think that we just need to be mindful of who we're applying it to.
Well, I tell people that are like, oh yeah, I fast. Like fasting, I think can be really good, especially, if you're fighting, like, let's say cancer, for example, starving those cancer cells. However, you're also starving your body. So you want to make sure you're really nourished before going into a fast. Like when the whole, fasting, it was that, these early people weren't going to eat for X amount of days. So they would stuff their faces where they could with very rich nutrient foods and then go into it. But if you just like have a salad and then think you can do a 2-day fast, no.
Yeah, for sure.
Doing more damage.
Yeah. And if someone just wants to start somewhere basic, like I think circadian fasting is like a really simple way to look at it, which is pretty much eating when it's light outside, right? And then fasting from the time that the sun kind of goes down. So that might look like, 16 hours, off, 8 hours on. So if you're waking up at say, 8 a.m., like you are eating between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. would be more of your like 12 and 12, fasting your fasting window, and then seeing how you feel is on other things like blood sugar regulation, right? So if we've kind of lost what I refer to as that metabolic flexibility and how our cells are able to use food as fuel, it all really depends, right? So I think feeling into it, starting with the circadian rhythm and making sure that you're focusing on, your good proteins, your good healthy fats, and, your kind of non-starchy carbs is going to be like a good place to start. Super basic.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. All right. So tell everyone how they can get a hold of you.
So I am on Instagram, so you can find me at Marilyn Dellit Wellness. Is a good way to touch base. I also have a website that I think is up here, so it's marilyndellittwellness.com. And if anyone is curious, you can go ahead and reach out to me either through my socials or through my website. There's a complimentary discovery call that I offer as well. So it's about a 15-20 minute quick chat, very casual, where you can kind of let me know what are your top symptoms, right? Like when did they begin? How long have they been going on? What's worked? What hasn't? And that way I can kind of walk and talk you through, what could potentially be going on and if it would be a good fit as far as moving forward and working together.
Amazing. Perfect. I love that. I think a lot of people would really benefit from,
I think everyone.
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, most of the population is kind of in their own little world. They, they trust the science, they trust their doctor, they trust the food guide.
Usually like nurses, my nurse friends I try to talk to, it's like, okay.
Well, they're in the healthcare system. So I mean, they're not supposed to know anything else other than kind of like a pharmaceutical wellness, unfortunately. But yeah. Okay. Well, you've been an amazing guest. We are so thankful thankful to have had you today. We are definitely going to stay in touch because Ash's going to have all the questions, and I think we're both probably going to start coming up with patients here. So.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful chatting with you ladies, and yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another amazing one.
Right? I really like this one. Well, last one and this one are one of my favorites.
I've loved every one because like everything that we've been talking about is so relevant to you know, even just what you and I are going through, but I also think like what a lot of people are going through. Not everyone can relate to cancer, obviously.
And that's why we shifted this season.
That's why we shifted this season to make it so that you can relate to other things. Who do you know that doesn't have a gut problem? Right. I had clients the other day that were like, we don't have gut problems. And I was like, yeah, you do. Like, and like looking at their blood. Yeah, you do. You do have gut, but whatever, you know, like people don't even realize. I think you get used to feeling a certain way for so long that you don't even know that you have something going on in your gut or that your hormones are unregulated or whatever. And also we're kind of taught to believe that like unwell is normal and well is weird. And like, you know, like you had said that one episode, like eating well is a diet and eating crappy is normal.
Exactly.
Which is like,
but it's
so
the
opposite.
Yeah. See?
Anyways, check out Marilyn Dellit Wellness on Instagram as well. And of course, check out our socials at Two Girls Without Cancer and join us again next week when I believe that we are interviewing a therapist. So exciting. Bye, everyone.
Bye.